Welcome to Jen Care's Live Talks powered by Swagher Magazine and Chosen Counselors, the show that brings the community to you Mondays at 8 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. Here we engage in tough talks and meaningful conversations, featuring guests that help us stay in the know. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure to like and follow our page. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to never miss a show. Now, here's your host, Jen Cares.
Well, welcome to What's Going On, and I'm your host, Kathy Blaze Jefferson. Thank you for joining us today, and I am so excited to have you here today with Miss Blaque Diamond. Welcome, Miss Diamond. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Awesome. Sorry about that introduction. I don't know where that came from, but someone programmed the wrong introduction for me there. So I'd like to give our audience a gist of who you are and what you've done in your career. So I'm going to read your bio to them. At the intersection of advocacy and influence stands Blaque Diamond, a voice shaped by lived experience and refined through purpose. A multi-award winning author, social worker, trauma coach, and a human rights leader. She has built a career centered on amplifying the voices of those who are too often unheard. As a USIDHR alumni ambassador and consultant with the United States Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights and the CEO of Access Granted on Roku, Blaque merges media, mental health, and global advocacy to transform conversation into action, redefining what modern leadership looks like in spaces where healing and justice meet. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
So, Miss Diamond, I always like to ask, where do you originate from?
New York.
New York? Okay. So, Blaque Diamond, just give us a little gist of what it is you do. I know I just read your bio, but I want you to tell them from your words what it is that you do.
Oh gosh. I am an author, but I'm a mother first. I am a caregiver of my mom, who's 101 years old. This Valentine's Day, she turned 101.
Oh,
And that's really my life with my mom. Everything else doesn't matter. I am a social worker. I've been working in the field for over 40 years. I am a trauma coach as well as a parent coach. And I just became an international protocol consultant with the United States Institute on Diplomacy with Human Rights. So I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm going to start branching out a little bit more with that. And I guess that's probably just about enough. And I have the Roku station, Access Granted, which will start airing next week as well. And that's the CEO, is that COO of Black House Communications. And I have my own podcast, which is Basic Black After Dark.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's a lot that you do, and I have to say, commend you because I'm a caretaker for my mom as well. So I know the time and effort, love, and everything that we have to put into being a caretaker. So I applaud you for that because there's not many people that have the opportunity to be a caretaker for their own parents. So thank you for doing that. What inspired you to become an advocate and trauma coach?
Well, honestly, it came from seeing too much and staying quiet too long. I've experienced parts of what I now advocate for, and I've worked inside systems that don't always protect the people they say they are helping. And at some point, I realized I just couldn't do the job. I had to speak up. Advocacy became personal, and trauma coaching became the way I help people heal instead of just coping. So it's a lot that goes into being an advocate and being a trauma coach, and you have to learn how to separate the both of those. Sometimes at once you feel as though that you're coaching, but you're also an advocate at the same time.
Mm. You said a mouthful there because you know what? It is hard, especially when you have a heart for what you do, you actually care about the people. It's hard to sit by and watch them not being taken care of the way they should be. And I totally get that. How did your personal and professional journey lead you to this work?
Well, to be honest, as in child welfare, that just seemed to fall in my lap. I was 17 years of age, and I wanted to have custody of my niece, but I didn't think the system would allow me to do it, being that I was only 17. I wasn't an adult. So I got all the information. I went to the libraries. I watched television shows. I asked questions, and I marched myself into court. And everything that I felt that I needed was sworn in. And the judge asked me questions, and I'm standing there with my palms of hands just sweating, just saying, please don't ask me how old I am, please. They asked me, did I have a job? I did have a job. He never asked me what kind. I had a job back in that day. Braiding hair for the people in your community was a job.
That
And
was
that
a
was my
job.
income, and that was a job. He asked me, did I have a home? Yes, I did. He didn't ask me, did I own it? He asked me, did I have one? And I answered his questions. He
Yeah.
did not ask me how old I was. And I said, oh my God, this man asked me how old I am. It's going to be a wrap. They're going to take her from me. I left that
Oh,
courthouse. I went to the corner, and I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I just lost everything that I ate that day and the day before that.
oh my
It
goodness.
worked. I
I can just see you
became
sitting there
God.
with your hands behind your back with your fingers crossed. Please don't ask that question.
I couldn't afford for him to do that because I would have lost custody of my niece. And I just did not want her to be a part of the system. My career in child welfare gave me the training, and that gave me the ultimate training of knowing how to go in and present myself. Still afraid, but that's what I did. But life gave me the understanding. I've
Yeah.
supported families professionally while navigating my own moments of rebuilding because I at that point, being the age that I was, I didn't realize that I was a teenage parent until I was into my 40s when I was working with teens, and they continued to talk about being a teenage parent. And I said, oh my God, I was a teenage parent. I had her when I was 17, but I didn't give birth to her. So I was
Yeah.
parenting and I was a teenager. And that overlap taught me that credentials mattered, but lived
Mm,
experience mattered too. And this work feels like a career, but it feels maybe less like a career, more like a calling. So that
yes.
was my calling at that time. For me, at 17 years of age, trying to graduate from high school, I wanted to be an international judge. I didn't want to be a mother. I had a
Mm,
plan, and that's the plan that I was going to stick with. But my sister was in a dark place, and I guess I was chosen. Not chosen to lie, but he didn't ask me. And I guess omitting
he
is a
didn't
lie, but
ask.
he never asked. He never
Right.
asked, so I never said anything. Grateful because I tell you right now, I purged it myself because I did not want my niece going into foster care.
Of course not. Of course not. And you know what? Even at 17 years of age, you weren't thinking about all that legality. The I'm not, the I'm not lying. I'm not telling the truth. The only thing that was on your mind was rescuing your niece. That was the only thing
Yeah.
on your mind, and you weren't thinking about, oh, I'm a teenage parent, because still, I'm sure there was times where you two were two young kids together having fun with each other at some times, even though you still
Oh
were the
yeah.
elder. So being a
Yeah,
parent,
most
that was
definitely.
probably not the main thing on your mind.
I didn't know, watching my mom and my aunts, my mother is the last of 16 children, and to be able to watch my aunts raise their children, I learned a lot just watching everyone. So I'm not saying I didn't have a childhood, but becoming a parent was it was easier than I thought it would be, but there were days that I
Right.
wanted to just be a teenager and be able to do what everybody else was doing. But I had a responsibility, and it
Right.
was the responsibility to her. And then came a nephew, and then came another nephew, and I just became that person. And that's where social work started with me.
Yeah. And you know what? You will hear that a lot from individuals that were raised in big families. The eldest child was I don't want to say didn't have a childhood, but that was usually the person that was helping mom and dad with the younger siblings. So it felt like they already had mastered the art of being a parent at a young age
But
because they had to be the caretaker for their siblings.
the thing that's a little different with that, the twist is I'm not the oldest. I was the youngest child.
You were the youngest, but
So I,
you were
yeah,
watching is what you were doing.
yeah, I was watching, very carefully watching. It's not that it was mistakes. It was just, if this ever happened to me, if I ever became a parent, what would I do? But that
Mm,
wasn't on my mind at that time. My own was just moving forward with school, but family was always first for me, and that's what it took. And it just took that one day to make that shift in my life, and that's where I landed, and that was to be a parent.
Can you tell us what were a couple of your biggest challenges during this, getting to get to where you are today?
To be honest, I would say instability. It was too many moves, too many adults making decisions, and not enough listening to the child. Um, a lot of kids are reacting to trauma, but they're labeled as problem behaviors instead of kids who are hurting. So that's one of the biggest challenges back then as well as now.
Mm. Well, if you're able to tell, what was it that pushed your journey towards trauma? Was it something that was personal, or was it once you got into the professional field?
It was definitely something that was personal. I've shared this story with others, so I don't um, feel as though that it's a problem to talk about it now. It was most people left New York during 911. When people are asked, well, why did you leave New York? People would say because of 911, if that's when they left. And I too said 911, but my 911 wasn't the same as everybody else's. My 911 was because somebody had put a hit out on my family, on my children, and my husband, and myself. So
Oh,
we had to leave. And we left two homes behind. I had owned two homes at that time. And we couldn't go back. I say landed in another state because that's not a state that I would have chosen to move to, but that's where I landed. And I stayed in that state for a little while. And I'm still there. I'm still here. And after being here for a while, I lost my husband. My husband was body was laying in the morgue for 3 weeks. Nobody told me. Nobody contacted me. Nobody said anything. I'm running around looking for him. Hospital places he frequent. Everybody had the same answer. He's not here. I made that last call, and they had told me he wasn't there. So I said, okay, he's not there. And I called back again. Something said to call back, and I called, and they said, yes, ma'am, he's here. And I didn't
wow.
believe them. I didn't believe them. So we went down to the morgue. I had some relatives go with me, and I told them that he had a tattoo on his arm, his left arm, as a matter of fact. And they went down to check the person's body down there, and they said, no, ma'am, this is not him. So as we approached and proceeded to leave, they came back and they said, ma'am, it is him. And I'm back and forth with, ma'am, it is, ma'am, it isn't. So I asked, can I see his body for myself just to confirm whether it's him or not? And when I tell you that it was the longest green mile that I've ever taken,
Mm,
the movie is right, the Green Mile. It was the longest Green Mile that I've ever taken. First, they took me into the office and they had a death certificate there with his name and everything on it. And I said, it's odd that they have his name on it, but you said it came as a John Doe. How would you have a name and he's a John
right,
Doe? So
right.
I asked to see his body, and they took me into a room that was nothing but silver walls, and behind those walls was bodies where you can, open the doors and the drawers and pull bodies out. But
Mhm.
a body was laying on the table, and when I reached the door and I saw the body on the table, I didn't have to go any further. From the top of the head, I knew who it was. And sitting
You
here
knew.
now, I can still see his head, and I walked around to his body to see him. And I looked down and I just looked up and I said, thank you, God. And I thank God for allowing him to look the way that he did because he was preserved for me to have his children see him when I had to have his services. But
Right.
my husband was gone, and I went through a rough patch because they had me running from place to place. When I went to go collect his personal belongings, they told me they couldn't give it to me because of the HIPAA law. I had to quote them so many different things about the HIPAA law and who I was. I was his wife, and you
Mm.
should have contacted, called your hospital, and you told me he wasn't here. They told me in order for me to get his belongings, I had to go back to the morgue to get the permission from them to get his belongings. It was just a running around that day, and they gave me the permission, which I don't understand why I needed it. And I went back, and they gave me his belongings, and lo and behold, in his belongings was his wallet. It had his
Mm.
ID, my phone number, it had my child's medical card, and it had my picture. So I'm wondering, how is it that you did not call me with all that information? When he came in, was he dead on arrival? I don't know, because from what I was told, that the doctor would not declare him dead. They had to wait for somebody to come in to declare him dead. I said, then if you wouldn't declare him dead, what happened? To this day, and it's been 20 years this November,
Mm.
I still have no answers to what happened to my husband. You're telling
Wow.
me that he was clean. I asked for autopsy. He was clean. So then what happened? They told me that he had a heart attack because he was running for the bus. If they had stopped that he had a heart attack, I would have believed it. But to tell me that he had a heart attack because he was running for the bus, for one, who saw him running for the bus? So that
Right.
means that you have a witness.
So there was a
That
lot of
right there,
information that was
I
missing for
wasn't
you. Yeah.
I wasn't buying the story then, and I'm not buying it now because I know my husband.
Mm.
There was many of days that we would have to catch the bus, and my husband did not want to run for the bus because he'd rather smoke a cigarette and always let that bus go by and say another one was coming. So I knew that wasn't the truth. So I know to this day that I probably will never, ever know what actually happened to my husband. But I know that he's gone. I know I had to deal with what I was told, and it was years. I searched, I looked, I asked questions to people. I went to the police department. I went to shelters. I went everywhere just to get answers. And I went to one particular shelter, and they gave me some information. And I turned to him and I said, but you knew who he was here and you knew he was dead. And
Mm.
in that folder, it stated emergency contact, and it had my name.
It had
If
all
death
your
is not an
information.
emergency, then what is it? So
Right.
I'm
Right.
still beginning to believe to this day that there was foul play somewhere along the line.
Mm.
And
You know what?
I'm not.
And that's why advocacy is so important for people that's going through situations like this. You know what? There's times where certain groups of people get the shaft, they get pushed aside, they don't get the care, the treatment that other people get. Is as if they're not as important. So we
Yeah,
need
this is what
people
I
like,
didn't understand.
yes, we need people like Blaque Diamond to be there to advocate for them that's gone through this type of trauma, that knows what's out there and what's happening.
Yeah, it was so bad that they put his name in the paper underneath homeless. And I said, you had no authority to do that. When he had a family, he had a home. You had
Mm.
no right to do that, and we let that go for a few, because we wind up going through something else where we wind up in the witness protection program.
Oh, wow.
Myself and my children wind up in the witness protection program. We were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And
Mm.
we stayed in that program for a while. And during that time, I had to teach my children how to play dead.
Mm.
Instead of teaching them ABCs and one, two, threes, I had to teach them how to play dead in the event that somebody came in here. You
So
have
with
five children, you're running around by yourself, and you just have to prepare them. You have to tell this one to go into the closet and get the emergency clothes. This one, they all had duties and things they had to do. You grab the two younger children, you grab the bottles of water, you are the driver, and you drive to the next location, which my son was told. If you don't see me, don't wait for me. Keep going to the next spot. We'll eventually catch up. If we don't, you know what to do. So these are the things that my children had to grow up learning. Other people will think, oh, your children are just like any other child. If that's the way you want to take it, then that's the way you'll take it. It took a while for us to even think that there's normalcy, without
right.
still looking over your shoulder, thinking that someone is still there out there somewhere with something for you. because there's three different incidents and you don't know who is who. So it took me a while to start to build that trust. And there are times still when I look over my shoulder, I go in rooms and I pivot because I need to know who's in that room. If I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to leave.
Right.
So I said, it's
Speaking
just the way that I live.
right. Speaking of the word normalcy that you just mentioned, through everything that you've gone through with yourself, your children, how did you pivot to get to where you are right now? What took you there? How did you get there? What
There's
started
another
that?
way of living. There's always another way of doing things. I knew that God wasn't going to let nothing happen to me. I think that He chose me a long time before I knew I was chosen. And in order for me to do whatever it is that He wanted me to do, I had to get through, He had to put me through those things. Because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing now. I still don't know the things that I'm doing now. It just seems that it makes some people happy. So I said, let me stay on this happy boat because this is where He wants me. And I am doing this. And then if He wants me to do that, I will do that. So wherever He takes me, I'm going to follow because He haven't steered me wrong yet.
Haven't steered you
So this
wrong?
is where
Yeah.
I'm at. Some say I take on too much, but I guess He feels as though I can handle it.
I want to jump to another area. There's you spoke about grandparents' rights. Can you tell me what why are grandparents' rights often overlooked?
I don't understand why. I really don't understand why grandparents usually step in quietly. Who at my age do you think want to start all over with Pampers, with sitting up in the middle of the night, with
Right.
diapers, with teaching them how to write their names? We don't want to do that. We want to live our life. But when they're our grandchildren, we're looking at, I'll speak for myself, phase two. I had to go down that same journey for grandparents' rights to get custody of my grandchildren. Now, the first time I tried it, I lost because I wasn't equipped because I didn't know grandparents didn't have rights. So I learned later on that in no state do grandparents have rights. So I had to figure out a way to get this grandparents' rights. And I
Mm,
went the next time and I won that time and I won the next time. So now this grandparent has rights. They don't ask, we don't ask for recognition. We just want to do what we need to do to have it done. But unfortunately, the system doesn't always value that kind of love unless there's paperwork involved. And I say that to say this: when a child enters foster care, they look for family. And a lot
mhm.
of times, the family member that they're looking for are the grandparents. They'll go to the grandparents then to ask them to take on the child or the
Right.
children. But if a grandparent walks in and says, I want rights for my grandchild, you'll tell them no.
Mm,
And I asked the system to look at it. Who do you think in their 60s and 70s is going to want to walk in and say that they want a baby or a child or to
right.
start all over again?
Right. To
I know
completely
that there are
take over.
sometimes conflicts
Right.
in families where maybe a grandparent may be a little mean about it and just wanted the child for whatever reason, but they have to look at the whole story.
True. That is
You have to look
true.
at the whole story because you'll probably have less children in foster care if you start looking at the grandparents because the grandparents know that something's not right. They don't necessarily want to make the y'all say they, but now they're afraid to do that because they're afraid you're going to take the child from them and put the child in
Mm,
the system and give the child to somebody else because you may assume that the grandparent is too old. Well,
mm.
sometimes old school is the best school.
Yes, that is.
So
And you know, being in
I admit myself have a problem with grandparents' rights for grandparents not having rights.
yes. Well, you know what? Being in the system isn't always right for them either.
No, it's not. We have too
Not
many
at all.
children, over 400,000 children that's in the foster care system now. So we do need loving homes for these children. I'm not here on your station to pitch for it, but I'm going to pitch for it anyway. We do need loving homes to put these children in.
Yes, that is
And we
very true.
need families to say yes. Even if it's temporary, we need families to say yes because some families are in dark places and they just need that help and that support. So we're just asking people to step in.
That is true. That is true. I mean, we all go through something at some point in our lives, and we need a little bit of help, not to be scrutinized and made to feel as we're a horrible person and we can't take care of our children. Sometimes you just need the help, and I think we all understand that. Black
Exactly.
Diamond, you're also an author. Can you tell us about that?
That also fell in my lap. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. I didn't even read books a lot when I was young, but there was one book that a woman gave me, and it was "Are You Still There, God? It's Me, Margaret." And that's a book that I will never ever forget. And I have to get that book because I have some granddaughters that need that book right about now. And my first book was In My Mother's House, and that stemmed from the hit being put out on us. I
Hmm.
didn't think that I was going to survive. So I said, if I ever have grandchildren, I want them to know about me, because the only person that could tell them about me was me. People may say they know of me, but you
Yeah.
don't know me. So I wrote that book for my grandchildren, and it got some controversy with not with people out there, with family members, because they didn't like what I had wrote. But I said, you have to remember that the book is called In My Mother's House. So those are the things that I experienced in my mother's house.
Right.
If you were there, then you were there. And if you were
Uh,
part of something that I had went through, then that's how you're involved. But it's not me with a microscope looking around and saying, oh, you're doing this and oh, you're doing that. That was just so my grandchildren would have an idea of what type of childhood I had and where I came
yeah.
from, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And the book started selling. And I said, oh, well, the book started selling. That's good.
That
Then
is
I
good.
wound up with custody of my nieces and nephews, and I had asked my son, who I adopted, who passed away this past August. Um, he asked me, why did I adopt him, and why was he in foster care? And he was 10, and I thought it was a little odd for him not to know why he was in care. Somebody should have explained it to him. So
Hmm.
I told him his truth as much as I knew to tell him,
Hmm.
and then as much as I thought that he should know at that age, because there were some things that he could have waited to hear or to learn about. And when I finished, I asked him, was he okay? And he said that he was okay, but to tell you the truth, I wasn't even okay with his story.
Oh,
But when I looked over his shoulder, I saw his younger sister, and I said, oh my gosh, this child may ask me the same question. How am I going to be prepared? Because they came into care for different reasons and at different times. So I said, let me start to write it down so I can be prepared just in case she asks me. And it wound up with the book, the Stacy F series of children's books on foster care and adoption. So there's 4 books in that series that I started writing with that. And some people say I got the bug, but I don't call it the writer's bug. I call it lived experiences. And that's
uh,
how I write. I write on things that I know about, things that
right,
I've
right.
lived through, or things that I put myself through in order to get you what I feel is you need as a reader. And that comes to my book, The Habitual Liar. That book took me 5 years to write, and it also put me in therapy. I
Oh my
needed
goodness.
therapy because if I did not go through therapy, I would have lost myself and I would have
Hmm.
been in a bad place. So it took that long, and I'm so grateful for the psychiatrist and the therapist that journeyed through this with me. They knew what I was doing. They knew why I was doing it. They may have thought I was a little crazy to put myself through the things that I was putting myself through, and it was a little dangerous with some of the stuff. But this character is just as real as she can be, because there are people like this character. In order for me to know more about it, I had to do a lot of research, and that was putting myself in
Yeah.
certain situations.
So you're talking about your life stories, and a lot of times, other individuals are going through these things, and they don't know how to deal with it, how to get out of a situation that they're in. And talking about storytelling, how do you think storytelling creates change?
Because somebody else is going through it. Some people survive whatever it is they're going through, just to let them know that they're not alone in this. You may
Hmm.
be living in a totally different state on the other end of the world and could be going through just what I experienced. But I'm here to talk about it. I know there are people going through the witness protection program. I don't know who they are. I
Hmm.
don't know what they're going through, how they got in there, but they may hear my story. I'm they have it, I guess, called snitching and stuff like that. We were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody saw us there, and that's how we got involved because somebody gave our name.
Wow.
I'm not going to sit here and say whether we would have said anything or not. I'm just saying that's how we got involved in it.
Okay.
Having a hit put out on us. Hits are put out on a lot of people for different reasons, but when your own family member put a hit out on you, you start to doubt a lot of things. So my stories, when I write them, I just try to get people just to understand, even if they haven't been through any of these things, I try to get them to look at life differently. Look at it through the set of lens of somebody who's been traumatized, somebody who's been going through something. Because there's always somebody that's been going through something. You're traumatized when you go to the dentist and you have a root
That
canal.
that's for darn sure.
There's trauma everywhere. So I can't tell you that there's not one person that I know that hasn't been traumatized by something. It's just not as
Yes.
severe as somebody else's.
You know what? And a lot of times we just don't know how to recognize. Some people aren't able to recognize it until it's gotten to, it's peaked or gotten to this higher level, and other symptoms are starting to occur. A lot of times we don't recognize that we've been traumatized in some way.
And
You've
that's
gone through a
exactly
lot.
right. That's why we came up with the podcast, my
Mm,
podcast, Basic Black After Dark. I also wrote the book, Cracks in the Surface, Strengths in the Core, Not Easily Broken. And that was based on the book, The Habitual Liar. And the word habitual liar is spelled exactly the way that I wanted it to be spelled. It's not a misspelling, it's spelled correctly. And those two books, The Habitual Liar, as well as Turning Pain into Purpose and Purpose into Progress, it came about right after that book. And when we did the podcast, we had a panel of individuals who I love them for agreeing to be on the panel, and they did the work. They opened up that book, and each week that we met, we talked about it. They did the work, and I didn't want them to be alone on that journey, so I did the work in the book. And when I finished the book, I looked at myself and I said, I wrote this book, but I answered it as if somebody else wrote this book. And I said,
mm,
I can't believe I ask these questions of individuals. And I can't believe that I'm answering them as if I'm a person. Well, I am the person who did go through these things that's in this book. So we did that book because of people are traumatized. And now we're going through turning pain into purpose and purpose into progress, which is on Roku under Access Granted. So that's something different. And we have some people who have some lived experience and some professionals who are on there, but it's not a panel. It's just a group of us just talking about the sessions that's in the book. So we take you through 12 sessions. And some people
okay.
have been traumatized, so they're welcome to purchase the book. They can go on my website and they can join in and watch it, but that's recorded. And if they have any questions, they can easily send us an email or they can send us any messages in order for us to answer them back. So trauma is
Okay.
just something that fell in my lap.
So with all that Black Diamond has done, the great accomplishments and everything that you've gone through with your family, and what can we expect from you next?
Wow. I'm going to keep pushing for human rights. Uh, um, I'm writing more books. I'm getting out there and I'm speaking more for
Okay.
the vulnerable. And I have some surprises that's coming up for some people, which I'm very happy to be working on and working with some wonderful people on it. Some people who have like-minded stories. And I just want to start reaching out to people and letting them know that they're not alone in this journey that they're taking, that somebody has to, stand up for them and to stand with them to hold their hand. If they just need me just to hold their hand, and that's what I'm doing.
Right. And you know what all that you went through, and you were doing it with your children. So, I mean, imagine someone out there. I mean, at least you had your children to hold on to. If they're just out there by themselves and not knowing what to do. So I love what you're doing. And can you tell us where can they find your podcast? When can they watch it?
The podcast, Basic Black After Dark, is every other Friday, the first and third Friday of the month at 8 p.m. Is with the Crew Network. And then Roku is access granted, and that just started. We just started that, and that's turning pain into purpose and purpose into progress. So that's recorded, so they can watch the recordings on Mondays. But we're going to try to put it out every day, so they can just continue to watch it. If they missed that, they can continue. And we're working on other shows that we're going to be bringing people similar to that. So we're really getting quite busy with doing some of the things that reach out to people and let people know that you're not alone, that we're listening, we hear you.
Yes, yes. So if someone wanted to reach out and contact you, how would they find you?
They can go on Facebook. I'm under author Blaque Diamond. My website is basicblack.com. They can go on that. That's where they can also see the books. Instagram is basic_black, and YouTube is at Blaque Diamond 2262. If they need to email me, they can email me at basicblackessentials. That's BASICBLAQ, which is how I spell my name, Black BLAQUEESSENTIALS @gmail.com. So that's basicblackessentials@gmail.com.
Okay, awesome. Are there any book signings or any events coming up that you're going to be at that you would like our audience to join you if they're in your area?
Although I'm an author and I write books, I write the books. I do occasionally do book signings. That's not a big thing for me. I'm more so wanting to work with people with trauma, and it usually comes through the book, and I bring the books there. I was just at a church, and I had a book signing there. So as things come along, I go along with it. I will be in Chicago. I will be in Atlanta. That's coming soon, and I'm going to be at a conference in Florida. So I'm not sure if I get a chance to do a book signing there. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be back at it again, just going right into it again. So I'm in the middle of writing 2 more books, and I'm just really happy and very proud. One of the books is very, very, very dear to me.
Such a busy bee there. Keep it up. Keep up the great work. And I'd like to also ask, how's your experience been thus far with Swagger magazine?
Oh, it's been great. It's really been great. I'm loving the cover. I'm loving the feedback. Loving what you guys do. And I appreciate you so much for bringing that magazine to the forefront. It warms my heart, especially the title, Swagher magazine. I just said, wow, yeah. It's wonderful, and it is lovely. And I have just been passing the word along. You would get subscribed for one, and try to get on there if there's something that you feel as though is worthwhile talking about, and they may get in contact with you and tell you that, hey, they want to have you on the show.
Right, because we need to hear more stories like this. We need to hear, these are true life stories. That's what we need to hear. We need to know what's going on in our communities. So I want to say again, thank you, because we have too many of our children that are in foster care or that are being traumatized, and they have no one there to support them. So again, thank you for all that you do in our communities. Thank you. And it was such a pleasure to have you here today. And I would like to thank you all for joining us here today on What's Going On, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for joining Jen Cares this week. Special thanks to our sponsors, Swagher Magazine and Chosen Counselors, guests, and viewers. Such a good conversation. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you found value in today's show, we'd appreciate your sharing it with a friend and dropping a comment down below. Until next time.